You just done yourself an injury.
Oh, no, yes, no. I was like, I injure myself all the time. I'm trying to pinpoint which injury this is.
Welcome to the 10th episode of this 12-part series covering the Grampians Peaks Trail from a running perspective. This is the Gary Word Trail Running Podcast. The intro music for this week's episode in the background is from local outfit Dirty Country. They're from Halls Gap, Pomona area. And they're on Instagram and Facebook if you'd like to follow along. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we're enjoying our trail running and also in which we're recording this podcast. That's the Jabberung and Yardwood Jarli people. They are the original custodians of this land. The traditional owners have a continuing connection to this beautiful landscape in which we live here. We honour elders past and present who have ensured the continuation of culture and traditional practices and for their ongoing role in caring for country.
I also wanted to introduce us. My name is Pat. I'm a local here in Gary Word, and we've got Phil.
G'day.
And Mark.
Nice to be back. A fantastic welcome party. We have just moved into what's known as Chinook, which is the winter season in the Gary Word seasonal calendar. It's the season of cockatoos. So it goes from May to July, and it's really underpinned by the coldest and shortest days of the year. So wearing appropriate gear at this time is a must. You're usually going to get snow on the higher peaks, and it's going to be slower going over the wet rock.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Today I also wanted to introduce our special guest, Kate Proctor. It's so nice to have you here, Kate. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Kate, you do a bit of everything here, and you're pretty hard to catch because you keep pretty busy, from photography to climbing to trail running to guiding. How did you find yourself in Gary Word?
It's it's a long and a short story. It all kind of happened all of a sudden. It all kind of began in COVID, or before COVID really kind of kicked off. I was guiding and working down on the Mornington Peninsula as well, loving the work down there, and we had schools starting to pull out of programs. COVID had started to kick off in schools, people were getting concerned, so we lost work. And I had a friend who was a climber, who I was working with a lot, and I was like, I really want to climb. That seems so cool. Like, who wouldn't want to go climbing?
I thought you'd just been climbing for forever.
That's what I thought too. No, okay.
I feel like it's had such an impact on my life that it feels like it's been a part of me for a while, But yeah, that was at the end of 2019, start of 2020. So went to Durai, Arapiles for a week and climbed there, and that was my introduction to climbing, which was very special. And then we had a friend who was working on the Grampians Peaks Trail, and we'd both lost work, me and my friend Tim, and I was like, well, let's see if they need people to work there. And I called up and I was like, hey, do you have work? And they're like, yeah, can you start in a week? I can start in 2 weeks. So all of a sudden we'd moved into this 3-story house in Halls Gap. I was living in a van with my friend, and here I am, still here.
So was this a trail building job, actually building the GPT?
Yeah.
We probably owe you a debt of gratitude. If you didn't build the trail, we wouldn't even be doing this podcast.
Yeah, that's
We'd have nothing to talk about.
I was pretty astounded in a positive way about a brilliant post that you did last year where you articulated what Gary Word means to you so well. Like, I haven't seen it articulated that well, even though I think a lot of us experience that. Do you want to talk us through your connection to the place and how you find it?
Yeah, I mean, I do love it here, and I think being able to experience it in so many different ways, whether it's guiding, trail building, like literally playing in the dirt, climbing, trail running, hiking, moving fast, moving slow, swimming. You create such a depth of connection too. You see intricacies that you wouldn't see in other spaces. Trail running can be moving quite fast, whereas hiking is moving quite slow. You feel things under your feet differently, and you see patterns differently as well. And I think that really speaks to my personal connection with the land, which really is only scratching the surface. There's so much to learn about the country, and it's it's pretty special.
From what I've seen, that comes through with your photography as well on the socials. Incredible ways of capturing the landscape, particularly at trail running events, climbing as well. But I guess your connection with Gary Word is something that you want to show in those photos for events around here as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think I watched a running film not too long ago. I think it was before the Buffalo Stampede last year. And it was of two runners running through the landscape in WA.
I think that was David Byrne and Blake Hose.
Yeah, that sounds like the right two. So yeah, running through the landscape in WA, and I felt very inspired by the way that they had portrayed the story. You know, I think we focus a lot on human achievement, which I think is really important. Like, we're amazing, but we wouldn't be here doing those achievements and running through this landscape if the landscape didn't exist. And to celebrate that and to see it also celebrated in that film in that way, and the connection to country that First Nations have on that country they were running on as well, it just felt like, hey, it's really important. You know, let's really celebrate where we are, because if it wasn't for this place, we wouldn't be able to experience it.
Brilliant.
It is brilliant, and I think I've seen that come through in some of your photos too, Kate. Like, you know, you talk about the First Nations people and their connection, but people is a big part of that. They're part of country and they're part of that. And I think, you know, some of the photos that I've seen from some of the event photos you've taken, you do an amazing job of actually capturing that essence of the people connected to that place at that moment in time. A pretty great way of showcasing people's experiences as they're moving through some of these landscapes.
Yeah, so Kate, you're a trail runner as well. You got different ways of engaging with the country here. And just before we started recording, you were saying you're just getting back into your trail running. Talk us through your history of when you started trail running in general, and what's your experience of running in Gary Word?
Well, my running journey didn't even begin that long ago. I used to run a lot in high school, just like playing basketball and things, and I was like, cool, running is a way to catch a ball, you know, there's no other, why would you run otherwise? And then I started running on the rail trail around home, growing up in the Yarra Valley. And I remember the day that I ran my first 10K, and I was like, wow, I can't believe I ran 10K. That's impossible. How is that possible for me to do this? And I remember telling my friend, and I was so excited, and they were like, oh, you know, I've run 10Ks before. It's not that exciting. And I was like, broke my heart a little bit. So I was like, okay, well, if this isn't enough, which I thought it was, but at the time I was like, I must prove myself. And I was maybe, 19 and was like, I have to prove myself right now. And I was like, well, I'm going to go run 20Ks the next weekend. I didn't know about carrying water, didn't know anything about fuel. I was just like, okay, running is just running. So I was like, well, if I'm going to run 20Ks, I might as well make it a half marathon. So the next weekend after running my first 10K, I ran a half marathon. The last 1 kilometre was me foot shuffling around my car because my watch had said I'd done 21 Ks, but Strava said I hadn't. So I foot shuffled around my car, 10 times until it said that I'd done 21 Ks. Yeah. And then I don't think I ran for a few weeks after that.
How was the experience? How did you pull up? Were you okay? Or?
I don't think I was okay. Yeah, that was kind of the beginning, I guess.
From memory, you also have done a lot of mountain biking, yeah?
Yeah, I would say that's where my heart really feels its happiest in mountain biking.
Sure.
And moving here, there's no mountain biking around.
Yeah.
And that's how I transitioned. Actually, inspiration through a really good friend of mine, Jessie Mayer. She'd done quite a bit of trail running, and I was like, well, if I can't ride mountain bikes, what's the next thrilling thing that I can do? I guess it's running downhill and running uphill. And then I started trail running.
Brilliant. And you did a pretty ambitious trail run up north of Gary Word. Like, I don't know, not that long after you were ramping up some distance. Did you go from Gar to Halls Gap?
Yeah, Beehive Falls.
Beehive Falls to Halls Gap.
Yeah, to Halls Gap.
Which is 35k.
Yeah, I think it ended up being 36 or something.
And you built up to that much beforehand?
10Ks the week before.
I'd been running consistently, well, more consistently than previously. So maybe like a couple of 5Ks a week.
Because that's not an easy 36 kilometres either. Like that's
It's very far from easy.
If you go back to episode, what would that be? Episodes 2 and 3. There's vert, there's technical running in all of that. It's not beginner.
I don't think you actually learned your lesson of any of these, Kate, because I did notice since that run you might have had a little bit of time off, and then you'll just put a few calls out in our local trail running chat. Just, oh, guys, I'm thinking of going and doing this weekend, and quite an ambitious kind of out there adventure. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, that's a pretty big call considering, you haven't spent much time on the feet over the last month. But yeah, obviously it works, so it's good.
Seems like you get it done.
Yeah, we get it done.
Having the accountability of running with people, I suppose something about the running community around here, Gary Word, Halls Gap, through Gary Word Trail Running, the group, there's always someone to run with, isn't there? Like, you can always just put the feelers out there, and the second someone says, yeah, I'll see you at the car park at 6 a.m, then you got to do it, don't you?
Yeah, here I am.
Yeah, here I am. We got to run.
And how do you find, like, obviously moved here is, I think, affectionately known as dirt bagging, essentially just living out of your van, climbing type thing. And I know I've seen it, I've seen climbers taking the piss out of trail runners pretending to be dirt baggers in their, $180,000 kitted out vans type thing. But do you want to reflect a bit on the outdoor community here and how you found it sort of moving here and just the people and general vibe of being in the park, not just trail running, but those other pursuits as well?
Yeah, I think it's very special. Like when I first moved here, trail building, I lived in a house of 5 backpackers essentially, dirt bags if you will. And it was a very intense time. We were in lockdown. The park was closed, so we couldn't actually really do much. We got out a few times, but not so much. And we were out every day on trail, I guess, essentially.
Because trail building continued through COVID.
Yeah,
and
it did.
so you were able to go out and work on the trail while other places were in lockdown. And how did you find that as far as what was happening globally? But then you're still building this section and being able to be out there in nature.
I mean, we were so lucky to be privileged enough to still work, and also in the location that we were. And we started work at 5:30 a.m, went till 3:30 or something like that, and the sunrises we would get in the morning, and it didn't feel like the rest of the world existed sometimes. It's just this is our little bubble, which was very, very special. But then it was also quite confronting to see how other people were experiencing that time versus how we were experiencing that time.
Yeah, I remember being in Halls Gap in COVID and we didn't quite have the same restrictions that Melbourne had. There was one time where we did have the 5K radius put on us, and I had my big map of Gary Word on the wall, and I'm like, I reckon there's a fair few peaks around that are within my 5K radius. And I drove around it and you get Barocca, Rosea, you get 7 key peaks all within this 5K radius. So I'm like, I'm going to see if this week I can knock off the 7 peaks. And I didn't advertise it too widely because didn't want to let people in other areas sort of know, but it wasn't a bad place to be, just being able to be connected to nature.
If one of the peaks was at 5.1 kilometres, would you just turn your watch off and just hit the peak, or would you turn around and not summit?
Or you just take your watch off.
Or leave it.
And leave it there.
And then you just
run up the hill.
100 metres.
Or you start it late.
We start, yeah. What are you?
There is one thing I want to, and we can edit this out if this goes with pear-shaped. Kate, there is one thing I would like to, just because when you're coming on, and I know Pat always starts a bit of a chat with guests about what's happening on, and there was one sentence in particular that involved the words trail running, disaster, and menstruating. Now, I can't really talk for Paddy and Phil, but that's definitely something I have no lived experience with, and I did feel, Paddy, there wasn't much banter in the group chat after this. But I am really, if you're happy to share,
for sure.
Be interested to know.
Just before, Kate, I will verify that I don't have any lived experience of that either. But I think when that came up, because we asked Kate, do you have any specific or anything particular about this trail other than building it, which is pretty amazing? Did you have any memorable collections about this part of the trail?
Yeah, I mean, I had some friends. I think this kind of speaks to my want to just get out and do stuff because I see people do things. I'm like, oh, you ran 50K? That looks cool. Maybe I'll try that. Yeah. Still haven't run 50K, but I had some friends and my partner at the time, they didn't run ever. I can't remember the last time they ran. They were very active, but them and a few other friends were like, hey, we should do an ultra on the Peaks Trail.
So non-run?
There was 2 runners.
Okay.
I would say 1 runner, 1 adventurer, 1 other adventurer, but maybe a different sort of adventurer.
Everyone sounds pretty badass.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I admire the gumption.
I do too. So they were like, we're going to do an ultra. They're going to do 50Ks.
Cool.
They didn't know how it was going to go, but they were going to do it. They just chose a section, and I think it started at Dewall, Mount William. Oh no, maybe it started at Redmond Road, and they went all the way to Mount Abrupt, or past then.
That's not
That's
easy
huge.
running. That's,
Yeah. So I definitely had a bit of FOMO for that, but I knew I wouldn't be able to keep up with these folks. So I thought I'd just jump in at the end when they're the most tired, and maybe I'd be able to keep up.
Good call.
And I joined them at Griffin Fireland because I had been progressively running each section with some friends, trying to tick off the whole Peaks Trail, and I hadn't actually run this section yet.
But you'd built it.
I walked it many times, but never run it. And I started running and I was feeling pretty good because the first little section after Griffin's Fine Line is pretty runnable. And then after maybe like half an hour, I was just feeling terrible and so tired. I was like, maybe I'm low on fuel. I'd been talking to Jamie and Dave actually about fueling because Dave, I think you just touched on fueling in the previous episode.
Episode 7, yeah.
Yeah, he knows his fuel.
It does.
And I think he once told me that you should take more fuel than you think you need. Maybe that depends on how much you think you need, but I'm like, oh, I'm running 20Ks, maybe I don't need anything, you know? So I put a gel down, I was like, maybe that'll fix me. Didn't really fix me, I was still feeling, and then I just had these immense stomach cramps, and I was like, wow, I should not have had that gel. And I mainly just started walking, and I was like, why do I feel absolutely terrible? But I was still enjoying it, still having a good time, but my body was just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I get to a point on the trail run, I just need to wee, as you do. And I, squatted down for a bush wee, and I had like blood all over my pants.
Oh, no.
And I was like, this is great. I now know why I feel so terrible. And
it all makes sense.
It all makes sense. And I'm definitely so not alone with that experience as well. And it was really kind of empowering and being like, okay, well, my body is going through a lot right now. No wonder I feel like very exhausted. I'm going to dip out now. So when I got to the next road crossing, I was like, okay, time for me to leave. This is it for me. And I hitchhiked back to my car at the start. And yeah, it was just a really good reminder of our bodies just show up differently every day. And everyone has so many different things going on in their bodies too. And forgiveness for that and allowing yourself to rest when you need it and to stop when you need to as well. But I just couldn't help but laugh when I found out because I was like, of course I feel terrible.
Racing, it's obviously not something that I would need to factor in. Booking races in the calendar and things like that. Is there some tips that people could consider?
I mean, I'm not an expert, and I'm trying to learn more about how my personal body works, because I think everyone who menstruates, you have different cycles, and you have different energies and energy levels in those cycles, and you might have certain blocks where you're like, okay, this is where I feel the strongest, and this is where I should train the most, and this is my resting period and all these things. So when a trail run event comes up on, I don't know, the day before menstruation, and that might be a really painful time for you, I don't know how people deal with it. Because sometimes you can take as many painkillers as you like, and a lot of people are finding out they have endometriosis and all these players joining in with pain and dealing with periods, and I don't know how people deal with it.
It adds another level of difficulty to something that's already intrinsically difficult.
It's also interesting that when you said, well, that's my funny story that I've got, it involves menstruating, and I was like, oh, this sounds like it's going to be a bit of a disaster story, but it sounds like the way you told it, it's like I've solved a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose as well, we're pretty grateful of you coming on and talking about this, because I think there'd be a lot of people out there who get a lot of value from it.
One thing I and we might edit this bit out depending on how this comes out.
You don't have to preface each.
The one thing, and this is going to make the three of us co-hosts are in a pretty specific demographic of people. I'm not going to say middle-aged white male privilege, but I just did. But the thing that I was reflecting on when this story came is I'd never thought about that. I'd never considered it. And I'm like, so what, people doing 200-mile races, everyone were racing it. There's people experiencing this the whole time, and it's not something that I'd ever considered, or like I've found it the reflection on myself of actually not ever consider. You know what I mean? It's just not that awareness of others and other people around you and what people are actually going through. So I thought it was a great thing for you to share. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'll add your disclaimer because I'm not sure how this will go down. But I think even any of us who are running, like absolutely every single person who goes out there and does some sort of physical exercise, some days it's not your day. You know, you have energy levels that go up and down. And I think for us, or for myself as a white passing male, I just don't have an understanding of my body in the way that I think a lot of other people do. So if I have a down day where I've got no energy, I'm just feeling wiped, I have no idea why. So was it a relief when you found out that you were able to explain your energy levels and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, and I think I speak for a lot of people who menstruate also. Like, you might have a moment in time where, like recently with my housemates, someone asked me to do something and I was like, I really don't want to do that. And I was like, wow, why did I react in that way? I was like, my brain and my body was just like, no, I do not want to do that. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, oh, now I know why I felt this way. And not everyone has that same experience, but for those people who do have regular periods too, and you can learn those cycles, and I'm currently on a journey of figuring out what foods work well with my body and allow me to have the most energy as well. There's so many different ways of learning your body, and I think it's pretty amazing that our bodies do this. And if we can become in tune with that and use it as a superpower, I think that's pretty awesome. And maybe that's lucky that we have that, because it's made us think about how does my body work a little bit more.
Thanks so much for thanks so much.
I
for
really
sharing.
like the positivity that you're taking out of this. It's fantastic. If you need a spreadsheet or anything like that for your nutrition, or I'm sure Pat's got one that can can break it down.
I don't have anything to say.
I might segue into the trail building. Kate, I'd really like to come back to the concept of trail building and get you to talk through a bit of what happened. I know, your experience trail building the GPT, and in particular, probably this Section 10 that we're talking about today. Can you just talk through what a day in the life of a trail builder would look like?
So often, for this section in particular, I can't speak to other sections. The benching, which is the creating of the trail itself. You're basically standing on the side of a hill with a pickaxe and a rake hoe, cutting into the side of the hill, patting it down, making it solid, raking it, making it look pretty. And that's often created before the steps are. So we're walking in every day. Let's say we were starting at 5:30. From Halls Gap, we would drive to site. We would walk in whatever distance it was until the last bit was benched, and then we'd keep working from there. So we had to walk a little bit further every day. So that benched was created first. And I think there was around 10 of us on a crew benching, so we might have allocated 20 metres, and then we finish that 20 metres and then we leapfrog. There's different grades of benching, so depending on the terrain, some of the terrain up there I can imagine must have been old creek bends, and you can't, how do you rake giant rocks? Impossible. So it would take way longer.
When you're doing the benching, you're taking into consideration the fall, where the water's going to flow, where you need to marking out where drains will be and those type of things. Is that part of the process?
Yeah, totally. So as we're benching, it is slanted to some way. And then after we've, say, done that 20-metre section, we go back over and we're like, okay, what sort of drainage do we need? So there's different types of drains. For example, spoon drains, nick drains galore. Not actually that many drains, but there's a few drains.
There are enough drains.
There's enough drains for you to okay, what will work best here? Where is the water going to flow? And how does this make a sustainable, long-lasting trail also? So that was, part of that process. And then we'd get different levels of rockiness. Sometimes the rock was impassable in places, so we would just leave that and skip over that. It might mean moving big boulders as well. And then once all the benching was done, by the time we kind of got to the middle of that section, we were walking for almost more time in the day than we were benching because we'd come in so far. And then we'd walk back out, and once that was done, we started doing the stonework, which was the steps, which we had been told, okay, staircases should go here. This is where a beautiful view is. This is where it will be most efficient. And then the steps also have diameters of like what will be the most efficient step for us to step on. It needs to have a fall so the water runs off it. It needs to have big blockers next to it so it keeps it in place and also stops people from taking beelines around the stairs, which from someone from a mountain biking background irks me to no end. So that kind of goes into it, and all the rock is sourced on site. So up there we will be carrying multiple crowbars of different weights, a generator, fuel. Sometimes we might have a power barrow, which is basically a barrow on tracks with a lawnmower motor that just helps you push things along.
And there was no like dingo digger or anything like that. It's
No,
kind of
not
like
for this section, no.
Yeah. So it was just a lot of hand tools, a lot of manual work.
Yeah.
And so some of those rocks must have weighed like 200 kilos sort of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing actually what you can do with leverage. That was like the most amazing thing to learn, was how can I move this giant object the easiest way? And there on a rock crew you might have 4 or 5 people because you don't want it to be too hectic out there. And some of the boulders we'd be splitting them first. So we use a hammer drill holes at certain intervals, and then we split them with plugs and feathers. So I assume they're made out of steel, but it's basically just a plug with 2 side pieces that you put in the hole and you slowly hammer them in a row to split the rock.
Same technology they've been using for thousands of years to split rocks, and they're still, it's still being used to the stairs people are experiencing when they're out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. How far would you move those big rocks? Like you said, they were locally sourced, but like how far might that be?
It depends on what was around and where they wanted staircases. Often they could be found, within a 20-metre radius, sometimes further.
We're using like any sort of pulley systems or turf winches and things like that to help manoeuvre rocks into place.
Yeah, so we'd have winches set up around trees with the use of crowbars to lift up the rocks that we had split, and very carefully chaining them, trying, not to get our hands squished. I think it became a very big trust exercise in how much do I trust my friend to hold this giant rock above my hand while I wrap it with a chain. And then you would hook that to a pulley and you would wind it up and then move it by pushing it together or pushing it along the winch. And then you would lower it into place. If that wasn't possible, it was just crowbar, another crowbar, and just lifting and flipping.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about this when I've been running over the trail, but it'd be interesting for listeners to think about that next time they're running up or down one of these perfectly manicured stone stairs. Think about how much work it would have taken to build that. Like, that's incredible.
I heard another trail builder, say that they were doing, I can't remember the time and the distance, but it was something that blew my mind. It was sort of 8 hours per, 100 metres, or how long did it take for a certain amount of distance?
It really truly depends on
the site.
What you're trying to get through. Yeah, I mean, some days you might do your 20-metre interval and do that a couple of times over because the benching is super easy. But as soon as it becomes more rocky, you have to remove rocks, you have to remove vegetation. It becomes much harder. You might do like 10 metres in a day per person.
So you're getting to Halls Gap at 5:30, driving all the way down to the trail, hiking all the way in, and in that entire day you get 10 metres of trail done.
Yep.
Wow, that's respect. I mean, that's really...
per person. So imagine you've got 10 people out there, and that's probably a really hard day,
This trail goes for 164 kilometres. That's some spectacular work.
You should run it sometime, Phil.
Yeah, I hear it's quite good.
Sounds difficult.
That is a question. So you talked about harvesting the rock and splitting it on site. How important was it, the sustainability, and try to leave no trace? We're in a very pristine wilderness part of the world. Can you talk through those kind of principles in the trail build?
I think at that time, my relationship with the environment was different and I didn't think about it in the way that I do now. So I can speak to it in some way, but in terms of what we were doing as trail builders, our job and what we were told to do is make it a trail that is world class, make it as something that will last forever. And that was our aim. Using things from on site. We're not importing rocks. It's keeping the environment, to some regards, local.
Yeah, no, but it's an amazing job. The feedback you hear from people that do feel like that it is a world-class trail. So big ups to you and the others that help build it, because it's a pretty amazing experience. But I know we're talking about section 10 here, and I was on this section a few weeks ago, and I think, Paddy, you've run it recently as well. I must admit, you did leave a section like right in the middle of the trail where it's just a Monty for this staircase, and it was like, what happened? Must have run out of time or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was really funny. We had a few sections like that when we were building where there was no staircases in yet. And we're like trying to lug tools around and we're like, it'd be nice if there was a staircase in here. And at one point we actually just had ropes with knots made up so we could get up. Because we were there over winter as well, which I've only ever done 2 winters in Halls Gap, because Halls Gap winters are grim. They have their own beauty, but they're grim.
So just coming to the trail walk through here, it's section 10 and going from Griffin Fire Line to Cassidy Gap Road. And this section is 11.5 Ks long and 450 metres going up, 370 metres going down. It's quite a runnable section.
It's definitely a runnable section. You got a nice sort of gradual couple of Ks that leads you into, and then a bit of a climb, but it's a runnable climb. You know, it's not as technical or as steep as some of the other areas.
That climb is over 3.5 Ks. So it's pretty, it's pretty spread out and it's not extreme.
It's a beautiful climb and very well made, must admit, Kate. Very well built section. But then you actually get up, once you get up the top of the climb, you get into this amazing section of the park. It's the first time the trail takes you on the western side of the Serra Range, and you get into this little pocket of the park that feels very different to anything else you've experienced on the trail so far. And then you kind of weave in and out, and there's about 2 or 3K where you're kind of cruising over between the east and west sides of the top of the Serra Range, which is actually a really unique experience for the rest of the trail too.
I find it really good running along there, and
oh, it's fantastic.
I love the ridge line that you sort of bounce, from east to west on either side of the top of the ridge line. It's funny because if it's a hot sunny day, you're getting baked on one side and then you get the shade on the other side. I mean, that's if you're in the afternoon or the morning.
Mentally, I think I always break this one down into just that initial climb, and then you get on the ridge line. It's something to really look forward to after the climb, even though the climb's not extreme, but it's like, cool, I just need to get up to the ridge line. Then you're on that, then you get some real flow.
There's really good flowy running along there, and yeah, you can really put the foot down a little bit. It's like what I think a lot of people think trail running is. You get these like beautiful trails, a few rocks here and there, but you can actually run it.
There's one little ankle twisty section,
like right at the top that didn't get...
Yeah,
pretty rocky.
There's some pretty good rocky spots.
Yeah, at about the 6K mark, it kind of peaks, the end of the ridge there, and then you've just got a nice flowy downhill for the next couple of Ks.
Which is so nice to run.
Yeah.
It's so good, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's like, I remember the last year's event, going down there, that section, that descent, and I just had probably the biggest runner's high I'd ever had in my life. I was just like, this is the best. And then, anyway, we can probably get back to that, but that's amazing. But then it ends, and the last K of this section's not as good as the rest of it. It's still okay, but you're kind of on that management road for about 2 Ks, aren't you, back to the...
And it just flattens off a bit where you start to look forward to the end of the...
Yeah. You're starting to feel tired then.
There's some curiously named segments in there. Phil, do you want to talk us through these curiously named segments?
I think, Pat, what you might be referring to, and I'll go back and give it a bit of context. So this was the last day, the first leg of the GPT 100, when the 3 of us did the team relay, and it was a stage race. So what that means for anyone who's not aware of it is that we ran the GPT 100 as a team, the three of us, and as the stage race says that we do it in stages. Each one of us runs each of the 4 days, and we break up the segment into 3 parts.
Great format for a run too. I encourage anyone to
Fantastic.
do it. Yeah.
Really, really good. If you've got 2 mates and you want to have a good team sport and turn your trail running into a bit of a team sport, it's fantastic. You get to line up every morning, toe the line. It's a different race every day.
And I think the easiest way to get into the GPT 100 event, this is kind of the team stage relay, I would say is the easiest entry, and that's why we did it in 2023.
So this stage 10 that we're talking about on this episode is the first leg of day 4. And so I managed to get this leg assigned to me when the 3 of us did the race. I was looking forward to it actually, because I had run this. I really, really enjoyed it. So getting the chance to actually race it, I was sort of having a bit of fun.
I feel like Phil's sort of skirting around the topic here. Like
The fact that I couldn't get the crown. I want to talk about the positives, I had fun.
I'm just going to call out the names of these segments. So there's a segment called Faster Than Phil, which I don't think is coincidence. I think it's the Phil that's holding the microphone over there that's in reference. There's another one also called Joe Be Nimble, Joe Be Quick.
Yeah, so this was these were in reference to so obviously myself, Phil, and Joe was the guy who was in the Esk Valley Orienteers team, and he happened to be running this leg on that same day. And so there was a bit of friendly banter and rivalry between us, would you believe? And anyway, some of the segments got named. I can't remember. I think he named it first, and then I went on and
I thought it was that when we finished that day and I saw it named the segment Faster Than Phil, I'm like, that is the best. What a legend.
It's a good sledge.
Oh man,
that's
so
quality.
good.
Yeah.
And it was hooking too.
Oh, he was.
It's faster than Phil ? So it's like he had to make the segment to prove if he was faster than Phil.
And then he had to wait for me to update my my Strava to see if he actually got the crown, which he did, and he was hoofing.
Oh yeah.
I was giving it a red hot crack that day. I wasn't on my heels.
Because it is probably, I kind of consider sections 8, 9 and 10 as the more remote areas of the park. So I don't think there were many segments on this section at all. They just hadn't been created yet. I must admit there was some general suggestion Phil should probably go out before we recorded this episode to try and retake Faster Than Phil, but unfortunately he wasn't able to quite.
Probably wouldn't have been faster either. But looking at it, and for the record, Joe is faster than Phil by a solid 2 minutes. He's done it in 11 minutes and 44 seconds to my 13 minutes and 29 seconds. So he's averaging 407 minutes per kilometre. Downhill, so it's gravity assisted.
But technical.
Yeah, so that's some impressive running there by Joe, and I had absolutely bugger all chance of getting him.
And maybe also just while we're on segments and Phil and Joe competing against each other, the whole segment, like the segment for the GPT Miler Sector 10, Joe has the fastest time with 1 hour and 29 seconds. And Phil, you've come in at number 4 with 1 hour and 7 minutes.
He was sitting there for 7 minutes waiting for me at the end.
Creating a Strava segment.
Creating Strava segments.
The fastest time for the women,
1 hour and 17 minutes.
Oh, Nadia. She had some really good tips about nutrition on the training camp, I remember.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
How good is this though? She averaged 6 minutes and 46 seconds per kilometre over the whole segment. That's so impressive.
There is a way you can loop this sector. It's a 28k run. You can go from, say if you're going from Griffin Fireline, you get down to Cassie's Gap Road. You can actually turn right along the road, so heading west, and you can run out to the border of the park out that side and head back up north that way. It's quite flat, and upon reflection, depends on what you're after, but it might even be better just to do an out and back if you want to get back to your car in one run.
Or just hitchhike.
Yeah.
With questionable success, I recommend doing it on a weekend.
Is this lived experience, Kate? Or?
Yeah. I think the longest I've waited is half an hour, but I am standing on the road sweaty, and I don't know if people want me sitting on their seats, but I know people that have waited hours.
I've had more luck, doing the hitchhiking at the start of the run. It definitely makes a difference. If people see you and you're sweaty, you're not...
Yeah, I was just thinking if I'm sort of thinking about pulling over to pick someone up and you get close and you see that they're a runner, no chance.
Kate, what's your favourite part of this section of trail that we're talking about today? Have you got one that is a real standout?
I was thinking while you were talking about the view out west. It's hard to say my favourite. I could say my least favourite, and it's the start. That's just feels like it goes forever, and I'm like, where are the mountains? Where is the view?
I can understand why you're not a big fan of that, because you were trucking along that section every single day
For a
to
while.
get to work. Yeah. No one likes their morning commute.
Absolutely. No, it was a very special morning commute though. I remember one morning we were up and you just have come around the corner. You can see, I think it's the Vic Range out west. And there was this beautiful inversion layer. And it's just like filling the whole crevice of where the mountains are not. And you can just see it peeking out of the top. The sun starts rising and it's just like, am I seeing this right now? Am I dreaming? Like, is this real? Am I floating?
Can you describe to people what an inversion layer, what that means you're looking at?
So you're basically looking at clouds sitting in the valley and you're above the clouds essentially and the mountains are poking out the top. So you don't know what's underneath there. All you can see is the mountains and it changes your perspective of how high you are, I find, because it's like, I can't see the ground right now. Like, I'm literally a floating object in the middle of the mountains and it's just beautiful. And I think that top bit has become my favourite experience, but I do love running the downhill.
There's something about that kind of fog blanket. I still froth out every time. I get so excited when you get to experience it on a run. Yeah, it does feel like you're standing on top of the cloud, and it's a pretty majestic moment. You know?
Oh, there it is. Pulled it out. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. You do feel lucky when you see it. You just sort of feel a bit like you hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
Also, for any visitors that are staying in the area, it's a bit of a motivator to get out. And initially, it can look like, say if you're staying in Halls Gap, it can look like it's just a cloudy morning. It's not going to be very nice out there. If you keep the fog blanket in mind, that could be what's happening. And as locals, we absolutely look out for that.
Oh, absolutely.
If you see those conditions, it's like, I'm getting up on a hill right now.
Absolutely.
I had a really nice moment up on this section of trail. It's probably one of the first few times I've ran it, and got up on the ridge just over on the west side of the ridge and had a super close-up experience, another eagle experience with another wedge-tailed eagle.
Nice.
Like circling around there, but it just kept going and going and it just hung there so close. Such an amazing thing whenever you see that, but it's a clear memory for me of that sector.
I also definitely recommend running it in the winter, even though I'm not a big advocate for the winter here. I think one of the beautiful things of being able to see that landscape every day almost for about a year is the landscape changes, the flora and fauna changes as well. And when you're comparing running in the north, which is a lot drier to running in the south, or even if it's not running, however you're experiencing the landscape, the amount of fungi that come up is amazing. Witch's butter, which is kind of like this almost translucent orange goopy thing that is all on the trees, and beautiful like flowers with dew on them, and it just comes to life. And you've got that cool air that you're breathing in as you're running, and more clouds and a little bit more rain potentially as well, so you should probably also prepare for that. But it's so beautiful in the rainy season.
Yeah, that's great. What about you, Mark? Any particular favourite sections of this part?
I don't know. I'm just going to start nerding out on fungi now that Kate's mentioned it. I'm thinking of like dog vomit mould.
Yes.
Chinoops, like this season we've entered, is really when the fungi comes out, and you probably don't get to experience as much if you're trail running, because you do need to take your time. I do often like getting up to play and just, even on a trail run, just taking a moment to be present for a bit. Sometimes it's fun to put the burners on and have a go, but you can get some little discreet moments and just sort of be present in nature the whole time.
As long as you're not chasing a crown.
No, that's when you just walk back and restart your watch and then off you go again. This segment for me was pretty good, because this last year I was doing the stage race in the GPT 100 2024, and I'd run the section a few times, but not heaps. I think we had a really good day during the GPT 100 camp where we did this section too, which was nice, a good day out there. But during the 2024 stage race, so this was the start of day 4, and it had been a tough 3 days, but I remember the start of this and I was just like, this is it. This is the last day. Feeling good. I was like, okay, still got a day 4's still the 3 last sort of sections of the trail. You need to keep a bit of a lid on it. But I just started getting so excited and kind of did the climb, and then we're up on the ridge line and I'm like, oh, no, this is too much fun. And then I'm just like, and I was letting the flow take me. And then I remember running into the aid station, and there were a couple of way better runners than me just there. And I'm like, ooh, I've gone way too quick down there. And then, it didn't work out so well in the next section. But anyway, that was, I think I mentioned earlier in the episode, that the runners high I got descending that flowy section of single track was amazing. Yeah, it was really good. So fantastic section trail. Highly recommend. Did it the other day, a bit of an out and back. So I went from Griffin up Signal Peak and back, which was good. That was the first time I'd run it south to north. Pretty cool experience as well. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I did an out and back the other day, and same sort of thing. First time running it from south to north. I actually found that uphill that we find it's really flowy downhill. It actually seemed quite short, and then the downhill, as you're getting closer to the Griffin Fire Line, it was awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. I wouldn't mind asking that, because during this podcast we've talked a lot about the event, but one of the things I really liked, Kate, about last year's event was you kept popping up. Like, you're there, you and Cal, I'd be like running and feeling a bit sorry for myself, and then all of a sudden here's you and Cal, and then like, oh my, and it was like having a little burst of energy that you keep like, oh no, they're there, and a little motivation. And
Did I throw my sunglasses to you on stage one?
Yeah, you did. And you know what? I thought I sat on them at one point.
Oh, that's okay. They've had worse. Because that was day one of the 50K, and I don't normally run with sunglasses, but it was this day that was 36 degrees, and there's an old saying about running that you should always try something new on race day. And so I was, works out well. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try wearing sunglasses while I'm running, and then so these things were just like banging around on my face, and they're just not the right gear. And by the time I got to the top of Flat Rock, and then your smiling face is there at the top, I'm like, I ripped them off my face and threw them to you. And so there's a bit of fear in your eyes, but all's well.
I also had that experience of seeing Kate out on the trail. For me, doing the miler, I saw you on the really, really hard Sector 2 that day because it was so hot and it was so far between water drops. And I saw Kate 6 or 7 Ks before the end of the sector, and you were out there with your camera taking photos, and I'm like, I'm struggling a bit with water. And you were like, there's people that have carried in water. I just carried in some water. We've dropped it like 500 metres further up the trail. The amount of energy that gave me. Yeah, thanks for the tip. I hope you told everyone that.
I reckon one thing you're not telling people is I know seeing you on day one of the stage race, and so up near Word Up, and I was like, this is good. But you're like, no, it's not so good. You just done yourself an injury. Pretty sure you just done your ankle or something like that. Am I getting this?
No. I was like, I injure myself all the time. I'm trying to pinpoint which injury this is.
I'll be interested to know, like, in the course of that event, because you did pop up in a lot of different locations, usually very remote, because they're like the best. You put some Ks under the belt, and I was just super impressed that you've gone from doing your ankle to lugging around a camera and popping up in the top of Signal Peak, and then where Paddy's talking about hiking the water in the next day. Like, do you actually track how far you go on Strava or anything like that?
It's about 100 miles.
And to do it way quicker too, with the help of a car. I do track it sometimes. It depends. Like, I think the outdoor guide in me really kicked in when I heard that people needed water too, and Mikey Dimiwantes was going to rad some water out. And as a guide and as just a human being, I always carry way too much water. People make fun of me because of the amount of water I carry, and I almost always have some left over at the end of the day. But that's the one thing that I'll never skimp on. And the idea that people might be running out of water was quite scary to me, because it's the lifeblood of how we exist. We need water. And I kind of had a bit of a break too in what I was doing. So I was like, let's get out there and get some water. And that felt like it was like pretty important that people were drinking water. It was so hot out there, and spending a bit of time out in the heat on the rock as well. Myself, I was like, damn, it's a mission. And seeing how people were dealing with that and coping with that, it was hard to see in a way. I was like, damn, I really hope these people are okay. And people did stop at aid stations and refueled, and people were okay. But I also just love zooming around and like following people on the trackers.
The dot watching is
totally
great.
It's so fun. And I was definitely following you for sure, Mark. I was like, I want to get to the station before Mark does, because that was like kind of keeping me going a little bit, because I had a little bit of extra license to kind of not just follow the front runners, which sometimes in the case it is. And
wasn't I a front runner, Kate? I definitely wasn't a front runner, just for clarification.
You got me there. But I was allowed to float around a little bit more. And I really enjoyed that because I got to capture a bit more diversity out on trail. And I really had a lot of fun out there and just jumping around and chasing people. And
I was going to say, we have a lot of stories about being underprepared. It's so refreshing to have someone who's like, you know what? It sounds a bit like a job interview. My worst trait is I'm just too prepared. I'm just really organised.
Everything else, nah, but water always.
On behalf of everybody who was running through that section that day, we really appreciated you plugging water in, along with others as well. It was so good.
We've talked a bit in this episode about your photos, which is doing event photography, but I want to know, what is it that you look for? How do you capture that moment? What are you looking for to try and capture the essence of the person, connected place, and the emotions? How do you try and capture that in a shot?
I am continually learning and growing on how I can do that in the best way. I've taken a lot of inspiration from so many photographers out there that are doing amazing work, capturing people in the landscape, and I really want to work on doing that better. But in terms of what I'm doing now, I love the moments that, when you're younger, or even maybe people now, you take a photo of them and they're like, oh, I don't want that photo, I don't like how I look there, or I was caught off guard and I didn't expect it. Those are the moments I'm looking for. The moments where you're so engrossed in your emotion and how you're feeling, and you can't even think about anything else because everything is so almost visceral, what's happening, and being able to just okay, how do I capture that? How do I try and portray how that person's feeling on the inside? Because if you're feeling so much emotion, you can't filter yourself. And if I can capture that and how someone's feeling, and then also capture that within a landscape as well, that's kind of the end goal. But I love emotion. I hate it, but I love getting in people's faces and really capturing that.
Some of my favourite shots that you took last year were actually ones where you captured, it was so hot, and people coming into aid stations and just soaking themselves. And you're capturing this camera angle from sort of the ground looking up at people's faces, and you're just getting this raw emotion of the spray of water coming out. And it was just a really great way of sort of capturing what people were experiencing at that time.
I noticed the same from your Stampede photos. I love the water splashing photos where you're just looking directly at the person while they're looking at you.
I'm like, please, someone throw water at someone.
I meant to bring it up in the segment section. It was something that came up in the comments too when we were talking about segments before. And I remember, Kate, one of the things you put in when we were discussing setting up this podcast episode today, you were talking about creating a segment because you had a name. And I can't remember exactly what it was from, but it was something like Poopy McTroutface or something like that.
Yeah, we never got to that.
We haven't quite got to that story.
Can you tell us about that, Kate?
I mean, there's not a lot to tell, but I just remember there was one particular segment, and there's this guy, German guy, who he actually lives in WA still. He loves it here. I worked with him on the trail and lived with him as well, and he had this thing about eating just whole trouts. And one day he just brought a whole trout up the trail and ate it for smoko. And I was like, wow, that'd be a great segment name for that part where he ate that whole trout. And yeah, I often fantasize about the idea of someone finding the trout bones up there one day and being like, wow, this really was an inland sea. But I think they're probably broken down now. But
maybe he knew something about nutrition that we don't know.
I mean, he was jacked, so maybe we should all start the trout diet. I don't know.
We really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, Kate, and it's been amazing to hear some of your reflections on the area and your experience around Gary Word from all of your different capacities. And if people aren't following, I think you're missing out on Instagram. And I also wanted to thank our listeners for tuning in, and keep in touch with Gary Word Trail Running, Instagram, all the social platforms, and join us for a regular Friday run. We run every Friday. The times change, the locations change, but it's all outlined on the social media, or one of our adventurous ad hoc runs on the weekend. Our next episode is going from Cassie's Cap Road to Banggoog. Looking forward to talking through the 11th out of 12 sections. So thanks everyone for joining us.
I also wanted to say thank you back to all of you and the beginning of Gary Word Trail Runners and what it's brought to the community as well. I think, even listening, it's like my favorite podcast. Like, to be able to listen to it while I'm running, and it's kind of really helped me recover from injury and be inspired again. I think I missed that a little bit, and what you're doing and what you're talking about. And yeah, I think everyone should get involved, and it's great. So thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on again. But I've got to say, it's probably the only positive thing that's come out of us being stupid running nerds, and at least something good can come of this.
Speak for yourself.
This
Phil.
crazy hobby that we've got. Yeah. No, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Kate.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it. It was awesome having you on.